So while we were racing the Lustang in Houston, we had two major problems with our fuel system. First of all, we had a fuel leak, and we believe that was caused by the return line from the engine and the fuel breather system not working well together. And secondly, when our fuel tank started getting low, we started having cutting out of the car in the corners, and we believe that was to do with the fuel pickup in the stock tank not working correctly. So we've upgraded and we bought ourselves a fuel cell that's got foam inside of it according to the rules for the Lustang. And what we want to do is we want to add ourselves a Hydramat into the bottom of the fuel tank to make sure we are able to scavenge the very last little bit of fuel that's available. So in today's episode, we're going to open up our brand new fuel cell and install our Hydramat. So before we start disassembling our fuel cell to install the Hydramat, what I would like to do is install the fittings into these three ports. Now this Hydramat comes with 3 ports, and we are not going to use the outside 2, so we'll install blank off plugs there, and then we'll install our AN10 suction port in this central location over here. So we're going to make sure that we don't damage the mat by holding the fitting at the bottom, and then we will tighten up the fittings from the top. You'll note I left the plastic on the Hydramat. I just want to make sure that there's no dirt on it so that it stays as clean as possible. Right, that's one done. Alright, so the first thing that we have to do on the fuel cell is to remove all of these nuts over here so that we can pull out the center section. So, here we go. Alright, with all the bolts loose, we can take out the center section. So there you can see what the center section looks like. We have our rollover vent and our fuel return, and as well as our suction tube. And this suction tube goes to the right rear corner. We're going to replace this all with the Hydramat, and so let's set this aside and then start removing our foam. Alright, so now we can start taking the foam out that's on the inside, and the foam comes in these little blocks, so we'll just start sliding all of these blocks out. The middle 2, slightly narrower. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do is remove this old pickup tube and then replace it with a bulkhead fitting so that I can do a flex pipe on the inside and we can plumb the rest of the fuel system from this side. So I've already loosened it with a wrench, and once that's loose, it's a simple case of unscrewing it. Alright, so now with that removed, we're going to take the bulkhead fitting and we're going to install the bulkhead fitting. We've got a washer and a seal that we had with the fuel tank, and we're going to place a washer and a seal and a washer on this end. And maybe you can hear the rollover valve rattling around, but if you look inside there, you can see the rollover valve, which will stop the fuel flow if the tank goes upside down. Alright, install the nut, and then we're going to clamp this all up down. Alright, so I'll just use an adjustable for a backup. There. Nudge this nice and tight. Alright, that will give us a seal, so we can now plumb the inside of the tank from this one over here, and we'll plumb the outside from this one. So let me put a dust cap on there. Alright, so our fuel return line is this port over here, and if you see there's no fitting in here, so the return fuel is going to spray in into our tank, and it could cause aeration. Also, the Hydramat manufacturer recommends that your return line follow the line of your supply port and end in a T-piece so that the fuel can flow over the Hydramat when the fuel is low. So I'm going to remove this fitting as well and replace it with another bulkhead so that I can plumb the return line as it is suggested by the Hydramat's OEM. So I'm going to remove that fitting, and then I'm going to put in our another bulkhead fitting. This one is a smaller AN8, which we're going to be using for our return lines. So I'll put that in there, drop it again, make sure we got our seals in, and then we will just clamp it up with this block washer. Okay, so find the right wrenches. And I know you get expensive wrenches to work with aluminum fittings. I'm not going to be buying those now. These will work just fine, and we'll just be careful not to slip on any of them. So there we go. We now have a bulkhead fitting for a return line and a bulkhead fitting for our suction line. Cap those off for now. We will continue with the installation. The rollover valve is inside there, so we'll just leave that. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to make up the fuel lines that will connect from these ports to this one and the return. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our cap that we have and place it exactly where it would be. And then I'm going to take a marking pen and mark where the base of the fittings will be. So our fittings are going to end there, and we'll end there. And then the pickup, what we will do is we've measured the height of the pickup, and it will be in the middle of the tank. So if we measure the middle of the tank over there, the pipe is there. So we need to make a pickup pipe that will run this way around and come and pick up over there. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is measure where the ends of these fittings are going to be. So it's approximately there. So we'll need to start there somewhere. And this one is going to be there. It's going to need to end approximately there. Now, we're not going to run the fuel hose here because we're going to battle to get a radius. But remember that the tank can run at a diagonal, and so we'll run it in this direction and around. And we have got our PTFE fuel hose. So we just want to make sure that we can make this bend radius, which pointing out like that, I think we can make without kinking. We definitely don't want to kink the PTFE. So let's measure the length that we need. We're going to need, I don't like this measurement, we're going to need approximately that length. So I'm going to cut my PTF hose here. Right, let's go and make up our fitting for this one. As for the return line, we're going to cut the same length over there, and what we will do is we will zip tie our return line here with our T-piece. Alright, so we made up our two AN PTFE hoses. If you want to know how to put these hose ends onto a PTFE tube, we'll put a link up for a video describing how we made these hoses up. It's really simple. You install a olive onto the end and then run the nut back down again. But look at the video in the link and you can see exactly how to do that. So with that made, we can now start assembling. What we are going to do is we're going to run this hose that way and then connect it up to our takeoff over there, something like that. And then at the same time, we're going to run this second hose from that takeoff next to it, the fuel return line, to the T-piece. We're going to add a T-piece over there because we would like to have that T-piece having fuel flowing on both sides of the Hydramat. So that will be more or less what our installation is. We're going to start by installing this fitting over here. And these are AN fittings. Because they're AN, you have a 37-degree taper, so we can just screw these on. We don't have to worry about any thread tape inside of there. Alright, once that's tight, we can use our wrenches just to give it a final tighten. If you're worried about marring these aluminum fittings, either use aluminum wrenches or put some masking tape on your tools so that you do not mar the aluminum fittings like we just did over there. Alright, so we have our suction line that's going to run out there, and what we want to do is bring our return line into a T-piece, and we're going to run the return line right next to our suction line like that. So we'll go ahead and tighten this up, and then I'll use some zip ties or some wire to clamp these two hoses together like that. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm installing these two pipe clamps here, which I think are going to work better than... I don't want to put zip ties inside, because zip ties can fuel over a long time. I don't know how stable that would be. I could use stainless steel zip ties. I do have a couple of them, but they're very long and unwieldy, so I've decided not to do that. I think these hose clamps are going to work just fine for what I need. We just want to keep them together and orientated. So what's very important is, you see the natural layer of the pipe over here. As we bring these hoses back, we'll make sure that they stay in the direction that they want to go, and these fittings are positionable, so I can return them over there. Alright, what we now have to do is we got to fit that Hydramat through this opening into the floor of the fuel cell. So what the manufacturer recommends is that you roll it up to fit it in. So we're going to have to try and see what we can do to make that happen. I'm going to pull this plastic off. So what we recommend is rolling this up tight, this, tearing it, and then seeing if we can fit it through this hole. I think it's going to be a pretty tight squeeze. You've got to be very careful not to rip or tear the Hydramat as it's going in. And there we go, it's inside. So once it's inside, we can start opening it out. Alright. And so you'll note we've got the Hydramat in now. Here's our fittings. However, the marking stickers are on the wrong side. So what we need to do is rotate the Hydramat 180 degrees. I think we'll be able to do it inside of there. There we go. Right, so with the Hydramat now in, you will see that we will have fuel pickup over here and fuel return over there, which is exactly what we need. So we can start bringing that head to start putting this together. But before we do that, we now got to slide all the foam back inside of here. So let's get going with that. So the first thing that I'm not happy with the fuel cell vendor is that there were bits of plastic on the inside of the fuel cell when I took the foam out. I was able to vacuum out the inside and remove all of those particles, so I've cleaned it up for now, but I would expect that a brand new fuel cell would be clean when you start, and so a little disappointed with that. The second issue that I'm not quite happy with is this little fuel cell flap that's here. It had this little aluminum plate with these fasteners in to retain it, but as you can see, this aluminum has been cut very, very badly. The holes are not round. There's very bad kerf over there and some burn away. And the fasteners, I don't know if the camera is going to zoom in on them, but the fasteners over here were actually stripped, and it seems that they've got metric and imperial mixed over there. So I'm going to throw this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a new little plate over here. probably from stainless steel, and weld some studs in the inside of it so that we can just bolt it through on the outside. So let me get going with that. Alright, so here I have the new little plate which I made up, and I'm going to reassemble this fuel cap over here. So the first thing is this flap that will go on the inside. Now, unfortunately from the aluminum it was already damaged. So the tank is ready, and you'll see here we've got the 16-hole cover with the pickup and the return line. Those are the bulkheads we modified. There's that plate that we made to hold the flapper in place. So all we have to do now is connect these up, torque them down, and then we can replace this lid. Right, there we go. We can slide those back in there, and seat this tank on there, and we're done. So we'll just push this down, and then we will bolt this up, and we'll be ready to go. There we go, easy as that. Alright, so there we go. Our fuel cell has got the Hydramat in the bottom, we've got our bulkhead fittings, and it's the wrong way round. Alright, so instead of taking this apart to turn the Hydramat around, all I did was pull the labels off and move the labels. There's no real front and rear, so our tank is good to go. Oh! Now it doesn't fit. No, it does. Alright, so I have the weight of it. Alright. Let down on this side. This one is going to the back, or does it go to the side? Sides. Alright. Yeah. The next journey for this fuel tank is to have it installed into the Lustang. Stay tuned for our road to Louisiana, where we show you how we build and prepare the race car.